talk about how to develop your writing process. So if you have meant to go to a different session, we will look away for a moment while you're done.
I will totally judge you.
So I'm going to be your moderator, and how this is going to work is we're going to spend about 40 minutes sharing what we have learned about developing our own writer's processes. And I want you to pay attention to the fact that we are each going to be different. So you're going to hear a lot of tools today to put into your toolbox, but some of them are not going to be the right tool for you, and some of them are going to be not the right tool for this week or this month or this day or this project. But knowing all those tools exist give you something to experiment with as you're learning and growing. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to have each of us say our name, where you can find our work, and what animal our writing process is like. And it can be our writing process this week, overall, or whatever.
I have to do work. Hi, I'm John Scalzi. You can find my work most places that they have books. And my writing process is ADHD adult monkey. That is probably correct. Happy adult monkey.
My name is Khelil. I mostly write for role-playing games, Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Dune, a few others. Was the Energy and Security Scholar at the Middle East Institute for a few years, and I worked at the Center for International Human Rights, and I worked mostly doing journal editing and writing for a few oil and gas companies over about 20 years, and mostly dealing with political risk. You can find me on the Storytellers Vault, the community website, and at booth 3054, they also have some of my books, and of course, Renegade also has my books, but I've already been paid for those. So, yeah, and as far as my writing process, I don't know, sea cucumber.
Excellent choice.
Sometimes we need to turn inside out.
That's right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is DaVaun Sanders. I am a speculative fiction writer, primarily of middle grade, but also venturing into other territory on that front. I'm also the publisher and editor of Fire Literary Magazine of Black Speculative Fiction. You can find my books wherever books are sold. It sounds weird to say that. And if you want to find out more about me, you can go to DaVaunSanders.com, of course. Animal, I would say a praying mantis, because I sit still for a long time and then a deadline comes up and then it's a flurry of motion and doing things.
That's delightful. I'm Karen Menzel. I teach at Iowa State University. My most recent thing was in last year's GenCon anthology that I published. I think mine's going to be Meerkat because I love to write together with other writers like this, and if there aren't other writers around, I'll be in my little burrow kind of with my tail curled over my nose. So I'm going to say my process is more of a Meerkat. Okay, so now that we have a wonderful group of animals in our heads, when you were just starting your writing career, what do you wish someone had told you about how writers develop their writing skills? When you were just starting your writing career, what do you wish someone had told you about how writers develop their writing skills? And let's start with DaVaun.
When I first started out writing, I think I was very rigid in my approach, where I thought if I was going to be a writer and be official, that I had to have a certain output, regardless of the day. So, for a lot of us, if you came up in NaNoWriMo, if that was one of your things, like that was a big thing for me. Is like, yeah, I'm gonna hit my word count today. I gotta earn that shirt, right? And looking back on that, I'm grateful for tools and communities that were devoted to that approach. I'm grateful for the muscle that it developed of knowing that I can consistently get words in when I need to get them in. However, being able to give yourself grace and flexibility in the process, that was something that I wasn't very good at when I was first starting out because of the self-inflicted pressure that I put on for whatever it was, achieving this idea of success in my mind. So looking back at it, having that flexibility, knowing that you're going to have great days and you're going to have days where you don't write, and that is okay, as long as you're still committing yourself to going forward and seeing the process through.
Yeah, that is really good advice, actually. I don't know a writer who hasn't at some point beaten themselves up because they only wrote 100 words a day or none. They're like, well, what about that time I wrote like 2,000 words or whatever on that day? Why can't I be like that every day? I guess I'd say the best advice I actually got, so I wish came true, was don't bleed for me, which is basically if there's something that's really close to your heart or that's really for you, personal piece of writing, maybe don't give that away. If something's really close and personal, if it's something you can't stand to be touched or cut or edited or critiqued, then that's not something for sale or published. Like, you should keep that for yourself. And that's an important thing to think about. Like, a lot of people talk about monetizing hobbies and things along those lines, but with writing, things can be very personal sometimes. So monetizing things that are really close to your heart, too close to your heart to be publicly exposed, you should keep those. You should only be willing to give away or show things or try to monetize things that, I hate to use the word monetize, but in any case, it's the world we live in, I guess, that you're willing to withstand critique and public exposure, and that editors are your friends, and that people who are critiquing you are doing you a service, as long as, they're doing it constructively.
Those two gave you really good existential stuff, and the one piece of advice that I have is that I wish I'd had when I was younger is really just stupidly practical. Read your stuff out loud, and the reason for that is that you will, when you're writing it and you're reading it back, your brain skips over all the grammar and spelling errors and lapses in judgment and everything else. But if you read it out loud, you will see everything that you are doing wrong. It took me about 10, 12 years into my career until someone said that to me, because they were like, the thing you just turned in is riddled with copy editor errors and we can't have that. Aren't you reading it out loud? And my answer was, I am now. But in all honesty, that cut the number of copy and grammar errors and that I had down, I think 70–80% just right off the bat. And having that as part of my process made it easier later when I was going back and doing more sort of deep tissue, like looking at the work. And I see a couple of you like nodding, like, yes, this is a thing that I should have done. But again, 12 years as a professional writer before someone said it to me. So I think they just assumed that everybody did it. And in fact, not everybody did.
The world deserves to hear your stories.
I think you just turned off the microphone. There you go, say it again.
The world deserves to hear your stories. Find a way to work around your crippling anxiety and your immense imposter syndrome, that there's no difference between sitting behind this table and in front of it. You have stories in you that people need to hear and want to enjoy. You are surrounded by your people who love reading what you read and are always running out of things to read. Right? So work really hard on finding strategies that actually work for you to get out of your own way and step sideways around crippling anxiety that keeps you from even getting something onto a page, tells you everything you've written is utter garbage, right? And gets you fingers to keyboard. And when you start sending things out, teaching yourself to take rejection and not personally and do the next thing, and don't let that imposter syndrome take you over. Welcome.
Okay, he has to do an animal too.
Yeah, okay, so Danian, not to leap upon you as soon as you've
That's all right. That's all right. I think that's a good example of the process. Sure.
So Danian, who are you? Where can they find your work? And if you were forced to describe your writing process as an animal, what would it be? I said meerkat, we had a praying mantis, and we had a
Sea cucumber
sea cucumber.
and ADHD riddled monkey.
Oh, okay.
So you can't do that.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Danian Darell Jerry. You can find my work. I actually have I'm in an anthology that just came out called The Map of Lost Places, published by Apex. I have a real lovely story in there that I'm really proud of. You can find my work at Apex. You go to Fireside Fiction. You can find my work there. If you look, Marvel, I've done some work with Marvel too, with Black Panther and Sam Wilson, Falcon. Yeah, a few other places away. Just type my name up on Google, my work will come up. If I had to describe my process, I'll say a lab rat.
Is that like, gotta get that cheese or finding my way?
Ooh, both. It's like running in a circle. But you know, I'm running, but it's repetitive, but repetition works for me. So.
Awesome. So in that vein, the question you just answered, and you're right on time, is when you were just starting your writing career, what do you wish someone had told you about how writers develop their writing skills? When you were just starting your career, what do you wish someone had told you about how writers develop their writing skills?
That every person has their own way, and I have to find mine through a process of trial and error. And it's okay to try different things and fail. And should be in trial and stuff.
That's awesome.
All right, we're all caught up.
All right, here we go. Question 2. What would you say is your process, i.e., how do you start? You've been given an assignment, you see a great thing that you want to submit to, you just had a good conversation where someone invited you to write something, you'd be like, oh man, this is going to be a novel. You're sitting down. What is the starting point of your process? And let's go ahead and keep Danian rolling. We'll come this way.
Okay. Well, I would say the start of my process, I just sort of like get in there and I start like trying to work on a scene. Really, I start with a sentence. That's my process. I like to start with a good, no, not a good sentence, a sentence. Just one. Everything else comes from there. But the reason I say that is because I do research and all of that. I research my, whatever I'm writing about. But for me, it's really important to start, and sometimes we can kind of hold ourselves back and keep ourselves from starting by, I don't want to say making up excuses, but just, letting all kinds of things get in the way. So I just like to kind of jump in there because I know for a fact that I'm going to go back and do it over anyway. So I just get started. One sentence.
Depending on what the project is, sometimes it's it's something where there's more of an assignment, like it's a piece of IP work, or if it's something that I'm, generating completely on my own, it's going to, vary how things work. But typically, like that brainstorming piece is going to be the main, that kind of jump off point where I'm deciding, which ideas are interesting and engaging to me, what I think is going to stick and make a compelling plot. I tend to get more excited about like ideas and settings and concepts versus characters, and that's just kind of like I think a piece of growth that I'm going through personally, where it's like I want to have more emphasis on characters, and I've experimented with trying to play with my characters and expand my characters initially, right? And then I think kind of almost a visual for that is like it's like almost like an accretion disk. If you're looking in for my fellow space geeks, is there enough here to make a system? Are there enough compelling ideas to make exoplanets, like that kind of thing? That's kind of how I'm looking at it. If it's a something that I want to pursue, that I think is going to be a story that I want to tell, and that ultimately, am I excited about it? Like, does it? When I wake up in the morning, am I having new ideas about what that could be? And I'll do that.
I guess when I initially start, if I know the subject matter pretty well, if I don't have to do a lot of research or talk to people about it, just follow the process, then usually what I start with is just bullet points. I'll do some bullet points of kind of some things I want to hit with this total story idea, whether that's themes or whatnot, or a character. Sometimes those bullet points will be an entire sentence about a plot I wish to develop, and often one of those bullet points will grab me, and that will become a paragraph or a chapter that I begin to develop. Usually the first one, but not always. I guess when I'm writing, it's often, to keep with somewhat of the metaphor, I guess, is it's less about it. In a sense, it's like falling in a black hole or falling down a well, I guess. I kind of have my fingertips on the sides of the wall, and I think I know what's at the bottom of the well. And as I descend slowly down there, it kind of slowly exposes itself. I'm never quite sure what's at the end. If it's really good, then I just simply fall down the hole. And then often I find something very different at the end than what I expected.
Again, my advice here is probably a little more practical. One of the things that I found incredibly useful for me, because I am definitely squirrel and can distract myself for hours and hours and hours, is that I approach it when it comes time to the writing very much like a job. Between the hours of 8 and 12 in the morning, which is usually when I wake up and I haven't had time to look at the news and get angry, I will sit down and I will just go ahead and write. And I usually, for my own satisfaction, I will write for 4 hours, or I'll write until I have about 2,000 words. I'm a former journalist, so producing at scale is the thing that I was trained to do. And then when that's done, I will go ahead and do the rest of the stuff. But the point for me of doing the same thing every day and putting your ass in the chair in hopefully the same place if you can, but even just opening a laptop, is that it develops the muscle memory. That you get to the point where when you sit down in that chair, or when you open that laptop, wherever else you might be, your brain goes, okay, we are in writing mode, and we're going to be there for the next few hours. And for someone like me who really does have attention issues, that just having that, developing that process has been incredibly important. The other thing that I do, because I willfully fight against myself having a process, is I use an app which is called Freedom, which blocks the internet. Because I can't do it myself, right? I literally will I'll just check my email, down a hole. I'll just look to see what's going on Boost, down a hole. So having an app that says, no, you're not going to do that, and then I get pissed at the app, because how dare you tell me what I can and cannot do. But then I go back to the writing. So for me, developing the process, developing the muscle memory, and getting your brain used to the idea that now you are going to work as opposed to just, oh, I can work anytime. No, I can't. I have to have those, have to have those fences and guardrails and stuff like that so I can get my work done.
So I've heard that described as a psychological theory called thresholding. If you want to look up more about it, more tips and tricks for it, it's called thresholding. It's the same theory as when you walk between the kitchen and the living room and you're going to get something and you step over a threshold and you suddenly forget everything in the world. Our brains are set up to go through a threshold. So if you set up a space, a threshold, when I cross this threshold, I am writing time. Atomic Habits is another book to check out. I see some nods, you've read it, right? Creating those habit stacks that get you going. For me, I'm a little different as a role player. I started playing D&D when I was 10 years old in 1985. My badge is 708. This is my 27th GenCon. I am you. I like to write the character first. When I'm really, really struggling, the thing that has worked the best has been to say, you are this person, you're in this situation, you're about to sit down at the gaming table with your friends and you need to like play this character and be this character. So I write in second person, which you're not supposed to do. Or at least very few presses will buy my second person things. But that helps me tap into that childlike excitement and joy of, my elf's name was Brandy. Anyway, that helps me. And then I do something from the first person voice and see how that's working and how that's feeling, talking actually as that character. And then I'll do a third person of that. Is it still interesting to me? And sometimes playing with voice when I'm stuck in other ways can help me there as well. Okay, what interventions, habits, or structures help you both develop and continue writing a project? So we're talking about writing process. What interventions, habits, or structures help you develop and continue writing on a project?
Okay. I mean, what I was talking about earlier is, probably answers quite a lot of that. The whole getting into a mind space of just doing the work. But for me, also, the process continues with how I go from one day to the next in the process, which is usually when I am writing, I will write whatever I write. I will stop at a certain time or for a certain amount, because I know that if I write 2,000 words, then I will be okay for writing the next day. If I write 3,000 words, I will still be okay, but I will be kind of exhausted. And if I write more than that, then I've wiped myself out for the day before. So honestly, learning how to stop while your brain is still in a position of being able to process the consequences of what you've written that day, so that when you come down the next day, you can then just move forward from that, is actually important. The other thing that I do is when I sit down, I reread what I wrote the day before for two reasons. One, to catch all the very obvious spelling and copy errors that I've made. Also to see if there's something that I need to address in a previous chapter because I've written something that I had not foreshadowed earlier, but also to get my brain back into the mind space so that when I write the next sentence, then I am okay to continue on and I'm back where I was beginning. And so developing that sort of continuity of story, and also importantly, not just for me, but especially because now I'm 56 and my brain is not as able to do. I fell asleep at 4:30 in the afternoon yesterday. So it is not as plastic and flexible as it used to be. But so being able to say, okay, this is where I know the barrier is, and after this, I'm burning calories that I don't have, in order to finish. That goes out the window, by the way, when I'm almost done with a book. I will write 8 to 10,000 words on that last day because I want to be done. But that is a whole other thing because the story has figured itself out by then, and then it's just typing. But normally, know your boundaries. Boundaries are okay. They're physical and mental boundaries as well. Don't exhaust yourself. Understand that particularly if you're writing a novel or a novella or something longer, that it is a long haul. Next.
So it was what keeps me developing and continuing the work. I guess masochism. But no, that's true. Like sometimes you're working on something, and I'm definitely one of those people where if it's all figured out, then I'm kind of a lot of the fun of the writing kind of gets out of it. I'm like, oh, now it's just the words. Like all the fun parts is gone. Like so, it's just the getting it as like a sea cucumber. I guess turning myself inside out to get it out of me. So yeah, that can take some of the motivation out. So for myself, I like to write collaboratively since I usually work on a lot of games. I find having other people to hold me to account or who I can hold to account even better really helps motivate me. It's a lot easier to do something for someone else than for yourself sometimes. And I guess taking a break, whether that's to read something or better yet watch a movie, especially if it's something you can then critique. I find that if I watch a piece of media and then I'm like, well, how could they do that better? Or if I argue with someone about like something I just watched, then that can definitely get me in the mood to work on my own things. So yeah, finding what works for you there, I think is very important. Taking a break and having people around you, whether it's an editor, a friend, another writer, or some community of some kind that can keep you motivated. Just don't isolate yourself. Like I need a private, somewhat quiet space to work, but to get me to work, I need people.
Sure. The question was habits and different things that play through the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that initially starting out on the piece, it's like you can be in a space where you've done your brainstorming, you've done your research, you want to be in a space where you are ready to go out and do it, right? Like we said before, like ass in the chair, make sure that you're actually doing it. One thing that I start out, like I feel like for me, rituals are really important. One thing I've started recently is lighting a candle when I know I'm going to start a new work. It's just something there that just like helps set the mood and helps just define that space for me. Another thing that I've done in a lot of my projects, when I remember to do it, is I start out with the same sentence, the same 10 words, and those words are I give myself permission to write a shitty first draft.
Yes.
And what that does for me is it unlocks like that ability to just flow, to know that I just need to get the words out, I just need to hack this block of marble out of this mountainside, because I know I'm going to go back and clean it up in my edits later. Now, as far as like drafting goes, I'm still, that mindset of, writing a novel in a month, right? So having word counts is helpful for me. I use Scrivener a lot when I draft. If any of you are familiar with that tool, it's been something that, although the learning curve can be a challenge, it's been worth it for me to use. I like that it has word targets that are embedded into the software, so I can use that. There's another tool that I use called pacemaker.press, and that's something where it's similar to similar structure where you can just go through and chart your progress every day, see yourself on a graph, actually putting in the work for a novel. Those kind of visual aids and stuff help me a lot as I'm going through the process and actually knocking out a book.
Oh, that is really great. Let's see. For me, like there's a couple of things that really help me, to get through projects. And I would say one is I usually write in the morning too. So after I write, I like to read, and I like to fill my well. So I would like to, just get into a good book, something that I really, really love. And so I always have a stack that I kind of go to during the day. You know, so a lot of it is just like books that like something like Children of Blood and Bone. I'm reading that now. Some of it's research I do, but also I like to edit other people's work as well. So coming out of my space and going into other spaces, other people's headspace, like during the day, that helps me. That helps recharge me. And also, I would say, like thinking about my own physicality. So if I working and then around noon or so, taking a walk, just to get my blood pumping. I'm gonna be honest, like making sure I drink water throughout the day. You like taking some vitamins, getting some exercise in. So yeah, and that's just to make sure that like I'm physically sort of like able to do the task. I like, me personally, I like lion's mane instead of coffee because it helps to like energize me, but it doesn't make me jittery. And for health reasons, I kind of backed up off the coffee. So yeah, that's my word.
Awesome. So for me, there's people who say accountability. Kind of also the word shame helps me with that one. If I know that I have a deadline, I'm going to be writing. If I have a friend with me who is writing away, I better be writing, and that helps a lot. But touching back on crippling anxiety and imposter syndrome, sometimes I need to talk to myself about that for a little while before I can step around it and get writing. I think I get kind of bored easily, so like I'll sit and I'll write for a while about how like, writing worse, that's boring. What if, dragons were doing this thing? Like my brain eventually is like, okay, never mind, that's boring. Let's go to the next thing. So for me, sometimes I need to journal. Sometimes I need to journal to myself, and I definitely need the other meerkats pushing me along. Okay, so my next question, you've already talked about carving the marble block out of the side of the mountain. Junk. Now what? Developing our writing process. How did you develop your revision process? What's your revision process? What helped you develop your revision process? What keeps you from getting lost in writing a new book rather than fixing the one you're supposed to be fixing? Or what helps you in your revision process? I think we'll start with John.
Oh, me. So I tell people that when I get to the end of the book, I just immediately type the end and send it off, which sounds like I don't revise, which is a lot. But one of the things that I think for me is I grew up, my very first short stories were being written on the very first Macintosh. So that was 1984. So I've always written using a computer. The way that we do things is often dictated by our technology. Writing longhand is different than writing with a typewriter, which is different writing with a computer. And one of the things that you can do with a computer is, rather than writing a second or third draft, you can revise as you go along. So I do what I call as a rolling draft, which is I write, and then when I'm like, oh, I need to fix something from an earlier chapter, or I need to address this, or I do that, then I do it while I'm in the process of writing. Now, this is very idiosyncratic to me, tied in both to the technology I use and the way that my particular brain is structured. But what it means is that when I get to the final chapter and I type at the end, except for a quick pass through for grammar and stuff like that, it's able to be sent off. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, and I think other people have mentioned, that this is a process that works for me. For other people, you need to have that whole first draft where you're like, don't worry about if it's not perfect, because you will get to revise it later, and that's part of the process too. But for me, the fact that I have always written on computer and that sort of rolling revision has been available to me, and that my brain is such that the idea of doing a second or third draft fills me with such exhaustive holy terror that I would rather chew off my own arm than to do it. means that this is the process that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, so I'll also give advice that I don't follow. Right, I would tell you that when you're working on it, don't touch it. Think of it like a scab. Get it out. Some people will refer to it as like poison. This kind of creative thing you have inside of you that you have to get it out. Otherwise, it's going to make you sick. It's going to kill you. Get it out of you. Doesn't matter what shape it's in. When it's out of you, just get it out. And then once it's out, like the marble block, then you can, find the finer details as you work on it. Now, me personally, yes, I started on a typewriter. I worked on WordStar and all these like terrible original word processing systems. And I also do a kind of continuous editing. I'm constantly going back and re-editing things. And I think that what happens to me is that increases the likelihood that I'll get what I want at the end, but it feels like it increases the likelihood that I'll burn out, that I will become just not as interested in the project, because feel like I'm kind of continuously reworking the same thing and not really making the progress I want. So I feel that if you're someone that can get burned out easily or disillusioned with a project or like sick of your own words, then it's better to get it all out and then rework it, refine it, as opposed to continuously kind of tinkering around the edges with the words you've already produced. Like it's better to get, in my opinion, I wish I could work this way. It would be better for me to get my new thoughts and ideas out imperfectly than to perfect the stuff I've already written. Because as far as word count is concerned, those are the same words and that number's never going up as long as I keep working on that chapter I've already written.
I love this kind of discussion to see like everybody's different approach. Because like for me, the idea of going back and having the revision process that you described would be like pulling teeth. It's like I'm never going to get this done if I keep refreshing this piece. So the workaround that I would have is to write a note and keep it moving. Right now, caveat to that process, right? Because sometimes as you're writing, I tend to be more of a we always get into this plotter versus pantser. And I basically however I fall on that spectrum was that I would tend to have a loose set of bullets like for a plot, nothing that's so rigid that I can't go through and massage it as I work through it. Now, if I'm in a space where as I'm going through, I'm burning through my draft and having that weekly process, weekly check-in. If I get to one of those notes where it's like it is such a big note that it is the ripples from that are going through and impacting like anything that's going to happen next in the plot, then that's something where it's like pump the brakes, let's step back and look at all this and make sure that I'm not going to finish this out, but I'm going to have to throw it all out because of the changes that I'm making at a particular point in the story. Does that make sense? So what I want to emphasize with all of this is that you're gonna hear so many different approaches, not only from us, but just in life, from the thousands of craft books that you're gonna be exposed to and YouTube tutorials. You really want to be in a space where you know what is true for you, right? And know what is true for you in different seasons of your life. There are going to be times where you're going through immense inspiration and the words just flow out. You're in a writing sprint with your buddies or whatever, and you're like, you're just comparing, I wrote this much and it was sublime, whatever's going on in your life. You're going to have other times in your life where you're dealing with tremendous duress because life continues to life, right? We all know this. Knowing who you are in those different phases and being in a space where you can accept that and let your writing process morph is going to be critical to continuing to put out the stories that you want. Also knowing that your process can change depending on the work, right? There's going to be something that might, just because of the length of it, you're going to have an entirely different process than how you would approach something that's much larger or that's, much more of a character study or whatever the case is. So the overall thing I'm trying to say is take all these tools, have a bunch of tools, have the ones that are your favorites, but have some that you break in case of emergency depending on what the situation is.
Excellent points. I'm glad you mentioned toolkit. I'm glad you mentioned craft books because it just reminds me when I first want to try my hand at writing. Now since I've grown, even as a kid, I was always creative. But I really didn't start writing fiction until I was an adult in my early 20s, and I was reading a lot of Stephen King. I read The Gunslinger, and then I read The Drawing of the Three. That's what really made me want to become a writer. So I went and got Stephen King's book on writing, and when I read it, when he spoke about revision, he said, okay, revision is what stops a lot of people from becoming writers. Because you think that the first thing that you write is supposed to be good, and then when it sucks, you get discouraged. And I was like, wow, and that made me think, I was like, well, I can do it, right? And just going forward, taking classes, I sort of, people would tell me, okay, well, revision is where the magic comes in. And I remember one person telling me, he said, I was in a class where a professor told me, he said, you'll be surprised what you find when you revise, when you go through a story for the 15th and 16th time. And I thought he was full of crap, because nobody writes a story over 15 times. But I mean, to me, from my experience, that's a modest number. I've written a story over 50 times. I'm maybe not just like writing it all the way, but I definitely went through it 50 times. And I was surprised at what I found the 25th, the 45th time through. For me, when I revise, I get ideas about stuff that I didn't think of during a previous draft. Stuff that can go in there, just character. I might learn something new, right? I might be reading something, or just come across some information that I did not have at first. So like when I revise, I sort of like revise on the sentence level. I just go through and I just look at every sentence and I just keep working with those sentences until they're pleasing to me in various ways. And it doesn't matter whether it's structure or character. Sometimes I might have to go through and just like bring the setting out. Because when I'm in the story and I'm telling it, I might forget to do something. Or I might be more concerned about one aspect of the story, right? I might be so concerned about making sure that I'm getting as close to this character, right, as I can, so that the reader can experience it. I might slack on the world building and I have to go back and kind of fix that up. Or I might be reading it and something dawns on me that, okay, this character's journey and trajectory is taking him, her, or them to a certain epiphany. They learn something, or the plot comes together in a way that I didn't realize before. So I go back and kind of thread the stuff through. So yeah, that's how I do it. But for me, revision is it's what like allowed me to be a writer. And even when I was reading on writing, when Stephen King, he said he did 3 revisions. I didn't believe him at first, but I was like, how do you just get it right in 3 revisions? And he didn't even say 3, he said 2. He said the last one is a polish, right, with a copy edit. But again, it's like for some people, I know some people who, like, I look at their first drafts and it's like unbelievable how polished it is, right? Just gorgeous.
Thank you, Danian. That reminds me of the Ira Glass interview about taste.
Mm-hmm.
You have spent your whole life developing taste. And when you read your work, you're like, man, that's trash. But you didn't get to see the first draft of the beautiful end product, right? So listen to that lecture. So we have 6 minutes left for your questions. What didn't we cover on developing the writing process? I'm gonna say black shirt and glasses. I saw your hand first.
Yeah, it's more of just like a question about some of the things that were said. So
Cool.
yeah, one thing that John said earlier, as someone who privileged ADHD myself, kind of vibe with was reading out loud.
Yeah.
One of the things there is writer's paralysis is due to too much copy editing during that process. If we spend our time just allowing those rolling revisions to really cripple the moving forward part of that process.
Okay, well then you go back over to what has been said over here, which is allow yourself to suck. I want to be clear that when I do the rolling revision, I mean, it is, this comes after literally 35 years of, one, having been a journalist, so having to write type copy on the deadline, and then carrying that process over. So this is a very specific thing. But basically, any time that you have found that you've given yourself an excuse to stop, and then you say to yourself, all right, I'm going to break that rule. If you are caught up in like a rolling revision and it's keeping you, if you're just doing the same 3 chapters over and over again, stop. Stop doing those 3 chapters, move on to chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. Don't let a process be the excuse to not finish. And this is, I think, what we were talking about, seasons of your life as a writer. The things that work for you at one part of your life, I'm a much different process person at 56 than I was at 27, which is when I wrote my first novel. Again, also writing fiction in your 20s. It's a very, very different process because my brain changed. And I accepted the fact that I am not the same person that I was when I was 27, now that I'm 56, or when I was 35, or when I was 48. It all keeps going. So don't give yourself an excuse to stop. Give yourself the tools to continue.
Here in front?
Okay, I'm a technical writer, and that's bottom line up top. How does the mental process for writing fiction differ? How do you even get started with that? Because when I start writing, I already know what I have to say. That's part of the editing process, is to make sure whatever you have to say is right there up front.
How do you get started writing fiction? Or
Yeah, I mean,
the
because
process?
is it mentally a different process?
I don't particularly know. I mean, I worked in quasi-journalism as an editor, so I have a story I have to tell about, like, an LNG facility being started or something like that. So it was a physical, real thing that had to be reported on. I guess there's not much difference except you're just making up what the story is about. I think you have something to say, and you want to say it, and you're going to find a way to say it. So I mean, how to get started? For me, I write bullet points. I write little sentences of basically what I'm going to be saying, what the plot of the story is, perhaps, or a scene I want. Often I'll have a scene in mind, like either a dramatic scene or a downer. Usually it's a downer. That's true. I'm like, boy, I can't wait to make all these people depressed in this scene. Usually I have that scene in mind, and I have to get to that scene. So I'm like, okay, what is all this other crap I gotta write before I can really bum out the whole crowd? And so with that focus in mind, that's kind of how I get there. And then once that scene resolves, then I kind of have to, be like, oh, well, now it's the boring stuff of finishing this up somehow. So for me, I find that thing in the story that's really motivating me, and I figure out how I get there. And that's kind of the process for me.
Really quickly, one thing you may want to do is figure out, okay, like what medium sort of works best for you in terms of getting your ideas on the page. And like, because some writers, academic or technical writers, what they'll do is they'll tell the story out loud. They'll record the story, right? And then they'll type it up, right? And edit it. And the reason I say from a technical writer, right, you're always editing those sentences, trying to get them as concise and clean as possible. So that may help you to tell the story out loud, like record it, just like you're talking to a friend, and then edit it to make it work on the page.
Use the tools that you already have. There's no reason that you can't use the stuff that you have to do fiction. The very first book that I have published, Old Man's War, has a section that is all marketing pamphlet. Why? Because I did marketing, and I thought that would work, and it did.
I think audience helps me when I'm moving between different styles of writing. If I'm writing a technical writing, I'm trying to explain to my students how to do something in Canvas, right? They need to know how to do it, how to get there. I've got a summary at the top, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm telling a story, like, why is my person there? What do they want to know or experience or feel? It's a completely different purpose for me, a totally different process. So it's learning a shift. But I would say you can use a lot of the same skills.
Yeah.
It's just a completely different audience need, I would say. And that takes us to our audience needs to go to their next session. Thank you all for coming.